I want to welcome everyone to Making One's Way in the World, provided by the PA Care Partnership in association with the Office of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, which is OMSAS. At any time during the presentation, which we want you to do very early during this presentation, please type your questions into the Q&A feature, which you'll find by running your mouse along the bottom of the Zoom screen. Today's moderator is myself, Jamal Ford, and I will be providing Professor Davis with any questions you provide throughout the webinar. Nancy Massey is also with us today, as always. With the partnership, we'll be moderating the chat, and I will turn it over to Nancy to introduce our speaker.
Thank you all for joining us today. Our speaker is Professor Dr. Illya Eliphis Davis. I love his name. Professor Davis is joining us today from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. You can see he's in his office, and that there's that big tiger behind him on the wall. So yeah, he's in his office at school. And Morehead is a private, historically Black men's liberal arts college and the largest in the United States. A class of Professor Davis's that includes freshmen to seniors, an honors philosophy class, also including a few women from Spelman, scheduled for this time today, will be an active part of the audience during the latter part of our webinar. Our host, Jamal Ford, our PA Care Partnership Youth Resources Coordinator, is also an online student at Morehouse College and a student of Professor Davis's. Jamal will provide the audience questions to Professor Davis. Professor Davis serves as the Director of Freshmen and Seniors Academic Success Programs and Professor of Philosophy at Morehouse College. Professor Davis told me that he has over 700 freshmen and 300 plus seniors this year. And to quote him, he ushers them in and ushers them out. He is a 1989 philosophy graduate of Morehouse College. He pursued a master's degree in religion and culture at Harvard University and doctoral studies at the University of Chicago in philosophy of religion. Professor Davis has provided invited lectures at the United States Department of Labor, the University of Chicago, Duke University, Mississippi State University, and the University of Notre Dame. Most recently, he provided the 2021 Martin Luther King Jr. Day talk for the United States Department of Labor. As you know, Professor Davis is our speaker today in honor of Black History Month. Professor Davis is a frequent social and political contributor to the NPR's WABE Atlanta. He teaches and researches in Africana philosophy and race, philosophy of language, and philosophy of religion. He is the proud father of two young ladies, Ilan, a 2021 graduate of Spelman College, and Anya, a junior at Spelman College. He is a member of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. I'll remind you all once again, please be sure to place your questions in the Q&A so that we can give them to Dr. Davis. May I now present to you Professor Illya Davis. Welcome, Professor Davis.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate you. I thank Jamal for getting this started. Maybe by the end, I will have cursed him for having done this, but right now, as we begin, it's always good to start off strong, Jamal, always good. But Nancy, you've been invaluable. You have walked me every step of the way. So whatever oversight she has there, be very assured that she's doing her job. Plus, she's doing more than I'm sure she's being compensated for. So I appreciate that. It's been very, very, very comforting knowing that at every step of the way, she's been guiding me. And part of it is I know she wanted to make sure I didn't mess up too badly. So I appreciate it. But it is an honor. I am very excited. This may be one of the high points of my early year, 2023. I look forward to this engagement because of the diversity of ideas that are represented in the audience. So I really appreciate that. My usual audience is normally comprised of stuffed shirt academics who think they know most of everything. So it's nice to know that I can be a little more relaxed, but thank you so much. When she and I discussed the title, we were in conversation, so I must give her credit for adding to the idea. I can't recall the exact conversation, but as she was pushing me, as I'm sure those of you who know her, she was pushing, come on now, what are you going to talk about? And I said, you know what? How about making our way in the world? Because it seemed to be so representative of the work that's being done here. And she represented Jamal as an invaluable partner as well. And so I said, you know what? It sounds to me like this would be the most appropriate way to address this. And so just for a brief moment, we're going to rehearse some ideas, and then I would like to get these questions, because my responsibility is to always try to learn. So even when I'm talking, I'm trying to figure out whether or not I am placing my ideas in the most appropriate fashion and the most receptive. So I will expect you all to let me know where the error. I'll tell you what I tell students. I make many mistakes. Your job is to catch me. I'm not going to tell you. So that's your job. Yeah, your job is to be aware of what's about to happen. But making our way. For me, and I do philosophy as a matter of, disciplinary requirement, but it expands beyond that. And my fundamental interest has to do with, what does it mean to be a human being? How do we engage the ideas of being human? We can't allow serendipity or accident to guide us in being human. Now, we already understand that we have the basic tenets of being human. We're biological organisms. We come the way we are. We don't choose. We just come into the world. You're born. You got what you got, right? Now, we also understand in the same vein that our science now can do everything, change our nose, change our hair. But deep down, what we consider to be you, this psychic state, this psychological disposition, your biological and chemical functions that encourage you to smile, to frown, to care, to love, to share. Those things seem to be perennial when it comes to making you who you are. Those come naturally. What I'm interested in talking about is the things that we choose to do and the type of beings we choose to be in light of our physiological, biological predispositions. And I think that is most important, because I often try to remind students, your decisions are the ones you must be responsible for, and that the day you take your last breath, you should be comforted in knowing that the decisions that were made were yours, that you decided to live the way you live. No one else can take that from you. And I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to have enough regrets, knowing that the times that I was given the opportunity to make these types of decisions, I didn't. And so, we often don't make the decisions because we're wondering about what other people may say, how they may reflect on our being in the world, the types of responses we have to them, and so forth. But I am going to encourage everyone today, when we live, we must decide to live and be responsible for the decisions we make. I mean, the thing about our animality is that, again, we don't choose. We are animals. I mean, by definition, this is just a biological category. We're animals. We're a certain type of animal. We're Homo sapiens sapien, but we're animals. And there's a beauty to that and a certain fear that one must have. And that is, the beauty is that sometimes your animality, being an animal, takes care of itself. I remember years ago when I was married, my father-in-law passed. And I recall standing there watching him, because it was a long and arduous death for him. He was ill, and they had put him on a drip, and morphine drip. And I watched him. He was breathing, trying to breathe. But what amazed me was, once the monitoring system no longer indicated that quote unquote life was present, the doctor came in, took his pulse, and said, even though the machine does not indicate it, he's still alive. And that was one of the most profound moments of my life. Why is that? Because we die hard. Dying is very, very, very difficult for the body to accept. And I was amazed at the fact that even when the monitoring system could no longer account for his life, it was still fighting and fighting and fighting. And so what's the value there? that our job is to fight along with our biological system. We must fight to live, to endure, to be, and assist our biological, assist our physiological, do our best to persist. Now, the interesting thing is it gets difficult when we reflect on life, right? And this, again, is associated with making our way in the world. Everyone has their own particular struggle. Everyone fights. Everyone lives their own unique lives. And we want to express the value of each and every life equally. But the particular should be responded with and through particular responses to the stimulus. I always tell my students that when I found out I had ADHD, for example, I was a graduate student at Harvard University at the time. And it was interesting because when I went in and did the test, the doctor, an older gentleman, he might have been in his early mid-70s, he came back out after testing me. He said, "How in the hell have you gotten here?" And I was confused. I said, "What do you mean?" He's because my scores on the exams, on these tests, these psychological tests, neurological tests were just amazingly not good, right? And he said, "What have you been doing? How did you do this?" I said, "Well, part of it being an African-American growing up, my mother rearing 6 of us by herself had always told us, you got to fight. You never give up, right? You never know what other people know. You never know what types of advantages they may have had. So your job is to fight, to do your best." So I never really understood myself to have a neurological learning difference. And so for me, I just figured I just had to work harder, that other people may have worked as hard. I don't know. I really didn't concern myself with others as much as me doing my part and following the lessons of my mother. Fight, learn, never give up, right? And so when he said this to me, I had to tell him I didn't know. Only reason I went to be evaluated because one of my friends, he had recently gone. He said, "Why don't you go and let them check you just to make sure you're maximizing your learning?" Okay. And I went in and lo and behold, there it was. And that was a turning point, a watershed moment, if you will, because it wasn't debilitating. It wasn't overwhelming, but it just gave me a certain clarity and tried to understand we all have our unique fight. We all have our unique ways of being in the world. And what we want to say is how best to address it, right? We don't get over it. We learn to live in it. I don't wish to throw it away. I don't wish to run from it. I tell people as many times as I can. Hopefully it encourages people to realize wherever you are in the world, there you are. And from where you are, you must say to yourself, how might I maximize my humanity? So in light of these physiological, biological, chemical predispositions and behaviors, how do I extract from life something I can claim to be mine, right? So the ADHD from, I'm 57, so it's interesting. Growing up when I did, we drank rusty water. We would play basketball. You go to an outdoor hydrant. It was a nice little flavor. We used to consider it. But now, all the institutions, well, that might call mental, lax and whatever. Okay. But more importantly, those things notwithstanding, whatever I have is mine. And I take ownership of it. It's my ADHD, damn it. And I'm going to do with it as I choose. I can let it control me, or I can fight it. I can resist it. I can have it bend to my will. That's what I do. And I think that has been so encouraging for me. Interestingly enough, as many of you probably know, they began to try to give me Adderall and other drugs. And I'm something of an anal person. So I went to them and said, "How is this excreted? I want to know how this is metabolized," because the doctor said, "Well, it goes through your system and out. Is there an alternative?" And lo and behold, he said, "Well, son, I'll tell you this, coffee." And I looked at him, he said, "Yeah, Ritalin and Adderall are stimulants." And so one thing about coffee is it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. So it has shown itself to be of great value. So I call it the elixir of the gods. Oh, yes. Whatever gods there may be, they fundamentally usher in coffee into my life every day, thank goodness, right? And the idea was that I could medicate, quote unquote, medicate myself. And his position was drink a little, because at the time I had never drank coffee. I didn't drink it in college. I wasn't drinking it in graduate school. He said, "Go ahead and try it. Don't put anything in it and just wait for a reaction." So I did that over a series of times. I drank a little, drank a lot. And I found my little even point, something that allowed me to reach that point of my own type of nirvana. And it was great. And so I tell you all this because this is what it means to make one's way in the world. It's your way, no one else's way. It has to be your way. I know we get advice, as you're hopefully taking advice from me, and you sort of take it with a grain of salt. You say to yourself, I hear you, but, and that's fine. I'm not telling you, I'm suggesting that one way of being in the world at least has to be your way, right? And if you can find other alternatives, wonderful. The more, the merrier. But what we do want to say is that the decisions we make, the life we lead, is ours. Now, that's going to require a lot of critical reflection. You have to be honest with yourself. You can't lie to yourself. In philosophy, we have something called self-deception, or we analyze self-deception. Self-deception is interesting because when I deceive you, if I were to deceive Jamal, it is I who is the deceiver and Jamal has been deceived. Well, when it's self-deception, you're both of them at the same time. A form of schizophrenia, right? And the idea that you're two people, one functioning in a way to undermine the other. So I think a strong example is Jamal wakes up in the morning and tells himself he's going to do X, Y, and Z during the day. Then the other side of Jamal says, well, not yet. Maybe we'll do it later. But then that other Jamal says, no, we have to get it done. And then the other Jamal says, oh, we'll get it done later. And sadly, the latter one wins, right? The latter one wins. And what is so amazing, as I said, one begins to believe oneself to the degree to which it becomes real. Jamal really believes he's going to do the things that need to be done later. And later never comes, as we always know. It never comes, right? It's always after the fact. It will be here eventually. And that's what's amazing. And that's the paradox of self-deception. You're the deceiver and the deceived at the same time. And you begin to believe the deceiver. And now, I'm not going to do an armchair psychology, but, sometimes we feel better, right? If I look in the mirror for too long, I all of a sudden become attractive, right? If you stare long enough, right? But that's a form of self-deception because there's something you want to be. There's something you want to see. I think that's fine, but never believe the hype, as they say, right? It's nice to engage, but once you believe the hype, trouble, right? Because then you impose your perspective of who you think you are on others and expect others to treat you commensurate with your false assumption about your own special place in the world. Are we special people? Yeah, but you're not as special as you think you are, right? And that becomes the problem. That leads to narcissism, right? That leads to this overwhelming sense of your greater value than anything else or anyone else. That's not where we want to go. We do want to have self-love, self-care, but we don't want an exploded notion of my worth versus all others, right? And before we get to the questions, the other part that I want to talk about is how do we respond to what is known as the absurd? And there are various ways of understanding absurdity. Two ways of understanding absurdity is a form of disorientation. And I'll give you one of the sexy German philosophers, Friedrich Nietzsche. Everybody loves Nietzsche, our favorite 19th century philosopher, who talks about nihilism. And he wants to talk about understanding this as a certain form of absurdity, wherein disorientation arises because one can imagine life being better, doing better, but you can't achieve it. So it's one of these unachievable ideas or aspirations that overwhelms you because what? You can't achieve it. So definitely that would create a level of absurdity, of nihilism, a lack of belief in the possibility of change. And then another form that he talks about is despair, that there are no universal overriding values to obtain, that you're just where you are without any way of changing your condition. Now, without arguing the truth of either of these, because those are in conflict in Nietzsche, you can find one, I think, in Gay Science. It begins with Gay Science, I think 125, when he talks about the death of God. And maybe you were so interested to read On Good and Evil as well, if you wanted to read those. But what's interesting is either of those, once they arise, and they arise quite often, that our response has to be a proactive, dynamic response. And that is when you believe, or if you believe that the options of life are limited, or you can't see your way through, this is the point at which you have to be imaginative. Imagination must now play a role. And that is, you must imagine yourself a certain way. Imagine freedom, imagine respect, imagine dignity until they become real in your life. You have to really imagine, what does it mean, again, to be human, such that you're constantly fighting to create the best you in light of the contradictions, in light of the possibility that you may not see an alternative way of being in the world. So imagine, that might be one of the greatest abilities of Homo sapiens sapien. Now, I'm not sure about this, but I don't think dogs imagine being a different type of dog, right? That would be amazing that a Rottweiler imagines being a German Shepherd, or a Chihuahua Chihuahuas do imagine being bigger than they are. But that being said, we humans have a unique ability to imagine ourselves being improved, being better. And what I mean by better is not stronger, not richer, but kinder, more loving, more caring. That's what I mean by better. That's what's needed. We humans need cultivation. Immanuel Kant, my other dead German philosopher, in his text on pedagogy, which is on education, talks about the fact that human beings are the only animals that require education. Other animals function based on what? Their biological predispositions to behave the way they do, right? Their nature, quote unquote nature. But interestingly enough, we humans require education, right? Most of the behaviors we engage in on the social level are learned. We're all born into culture. And so that is something that's quite beautiful. It allows for us to imagine improving culture, improving the resources, right? Doing better, loving gay brothers and sisters, caring for people who need our assistance, extending the value of individuals when they are older than the rest of us, right? Individuals with debilitating or infirmities, we have to say, listen, they don't lose value. They just manifest themselves differently in the world. That's it. But the value never goes away. And value is not to be ascribed to someone because we think they don't value themselves. That's when we're supposed to value them more. I'm supposed to extend dignity and respect to you if you never extend those virtues to yourself. That's what makes us human. And that's the imaginative part. How might you be better? How can I assist you? Tell me what you need, whatever I can do, even if you just want me to shut up, as many of you probably now. But I'll tell Jamal, we can field some questions. I definitely want to hear from you all. I saw the chats moving. So I'm definitely interested in getting that. So Brother Jamal, again, thank you. Nancy, thank you. But let's do some questions, right?
Can I just jump in before the questions start?
Please do.
Professor Davis mentioned before we actually started recording that he's going to be speaking in Chicago this weekend.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
St. Paul's Episcopal Church.
And I wanted to be, because I know we have people not just in Pennsylvania, but from, around the country. And I thought if anybody is in the Chicago area, you have an opportunity to go and hear Professor Davis speak at St. Paul's Episcopal Church.
Episcopal, don't forget that.
That's right, Episcopal.
Of which I'm not one. I was telling Nancy, I don't have enough money to be an Episcopalian, but I will definitely be enjoying my opportunity to speak with the Episcopal church there.
Okay, I'm sorry, Joel, go ahead.
No, I want to encourage everyone, if you have any questions, thoughts about anything that Professor Davis has said thus far, please put your questions in the Q&A section, or if you're having a hard time finding your Q&A section, feel free to put them in the chat, and Nancy will try to catch it if it doesn't scroll too fast.
I just saw that Charles Moore is going to be in Chicago this weekend. Who knows? He might be there at St. Paul's. Sorry.
So This took me back to a conversation, right? And it's about, you know, the human experience and how we experience life, and going sort of off of where you begin of, you know, what is being a human being, right? And the question that you asked was a little bit more thought-provoking in my estimation, because you asked us, what does it mean to be a man? What is a man? And that question kept me up nights, like just thinking, like, what does it mean? Because it's just like you said, it's beyond the biological. Yes, we can biologically define what a man is. We can biologically define what a woman is, but what does that mean? What does it mean to live as a man? What does it mean to live as a woman? And I really got to thinking, I don't know. I don't know what that is. You know, and what I ended up coming up with is that's different for everyone. That's different for everyone. My journey in this life, as a Black man who grew up in the inner city of Philadelphia, is totally different from your experience as a Black man growing up in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And that's totally different. And I think, you know, especially when we start to talk about issues in and involving minorities, Black people in this country, we all seem to want to think that that's the same plight. And I think in a larger scheme of things, a larger picture, yeah, some of those things, they intersect, right? But that's not always true. I know brothers who grew up in suburbs and around Caucasian people the majority of their life, and they have no idea what it's like to grow up on the inner city. So the thought and just to, you know, help everybody and bring this around, you know, if I'm a Black man living with a mental health diagnosis, say I have depression or anything, my plight, the way that I see the world, the way that I live through the world, may be totally different than somebody else who has the same diagnosis. And looking at those things is I think at times we try to put everybody in the same box. And I don't believe that's the most equitable way to do things. Mm-hmm. You know, looking at the way we all get along, how it's you know, what's good for you may not be good for me. I may not thrive in that environment that you're trying to create for all people who have, you know, depression or anxiety or whatever. It doesn't work for me. And I think sometimes we feel that, you know, well, go see somebody, go talk to somebody. And, you know, all of those things are supposed to be the things that work for people who have a diagnosis or a this or a that. But it might not work for me.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And you know what? This is why we must maintain the complexity and the integrity of the personal, of the specific. It's very easy to lump people. We come up with terms, and the terms have value, but it cannot, as you just intimated, it cannot encapsulate all of the fundamental complexities and elements that are involved. Place, location, gender, sex, all of these. Right? And, you know, the sexy term now is intersectionality. Okay, we'll use it. It's a $1,000 word. And the point being at bottom is the diversity of lived experiences, the diversity of biological experiences. All of this should always be included. So the difficulty is maintaining that. The easy part is conflating, putting everyone in the same class, right? You just drop everybody in. They have X disorder or malfunction or whatever term you would like to use. More importantly, that's why I refer to the fact that my ADHD is mine, right? That's why I emphasize that it's mine. I don't know how yours or anyone else's function. We'll talk. There may be similarities, which is fine. But at the end of the day, I don't want to walk away snatching yours and now morphing it into me. Now, that's a form of narcissism. You know, one of the very milquetoast ways of talking about diversity is, you know, Jamal and Nancy and Illya, we're all one. No, we're not. The respect that I extend to you is because we're not the same. That's the beauty. That's the love. That's the ethic. We're not the same. It's easy to love the same. The same becomes me, which makes it narcissistic. It's even easy for me to, oh, I love Nancy. She's just like me. That's easy. It has to be Nancy is nothing like me. Love you. Do you understand? That's hard. Mm-hmm. That is hard. So we have to say to ourselves, keep it complex. Don't make it simple. Jamal and I never have to agree. If we do, fine. But that's not a prerequisite for my love and my care, my respect, and the dignity that I'm supposed to extend. And we have a tendency to think that it does, right? Y'all have nothing in common. That's right. I talked to him because I'm about to have a good fight. And when I finish fighting with Jamal, I can go and recalibrate, right? That's the beauty. It constantly pushes and pushes, right? You become complacent when you're around people who agree with you all the time. Mm-hmm. Always. I mean, my God. You know, there used to be this old cartoon that would come on, and there was a bulldog and a chihuahua. And the chihuahua was just constantly affirming the bulldog. It was bouncing around. I can't remember the name of it, but the little, yes, sir, you're the greatest. You're the best. You're the most powerful. You're so good. You're so, who does this? Like, well, I could name 2 or 3 politicians that do, but I'll try to stay in the main here. But that's not healthy is the point. It's not healthy. All right. The idea of growth has to be a constant understanding of difference. Right? You constantly, even if you're by yourself, become your best critic. Not worst, your best critic. Open yourself up to reevaluation by you. It's hard because guess what? You know things that we don't know about you. So that's going to make it scary too. I know it. Have the phone near in case you need assistance. But you really have to be more honest with yourself. Yeah, Sylvester and Spike, somebody found the name. Yeah, that was, I mean, telling you, it's just watch the cartoon. It's a beautiful metaphor. And we don't want to fall victim to that. So yes, Jamal, I agree 100%. Back on the point about what it means to be a man. So what I had the class do was consider what it means to be a man, because the thing about it is, again, I'm old enough yet young enough to have heard many people say, well, you know, you need a man to teach a boy to be a man. Well, the funny thing about it is, by definition, if being whatever a man is something one learns, that means anyone can teach it. So my mother can teach as well. And some men would be bad teachers. So whatever you think a man is, maybe the natural will take control and then intervene with the imaginative and the creative to improve whatever the natural provided. See, that's where I want to go. All of us naturally fight or flight, right? Naturally, you may have a higher, output of testosterone than estrogen. All of that's already in there. What do you do with that stuff, though? That's where we got to go. What am I going to do with it? Stop relying on it as the governing chemical that will make your decisions. We're not hunters and gatherers anymore. We have to say to ourselves, how do we maximize our humanity by appreciating and fundamentally refining qualities? Again, care, love, respect, dignity, character, all of that is what we need to work on. And the reason why I keep focusing on why it needs to be worked on, because we're killing each other faster now. Look at the wars. Look at what we do to each other. So all of the claims about us doing better seems to fly in the face of what's actually happening in the world. We're killing each other faster. And if we don't kill each other, we scare the hell out of each other by implying death. We imply it. Now, since World War II, that's the model. I'll hit you back. It's such a childish affair. Say it again. You better not. If you say it to me again, I'll get you. Like, this is it. This is public policy. I dare you. I double dog dare you. It's childish. When will someone step up and say, irrespective of how you view me, I will love you? I mean, we use Martin Luther King for it, right? It's amazing how he's manipulated. People want to rely on a love ethic that they believe he espoused, but are the first ones in line to go to war. The first ones in line. And then when your own citizenry wants to protest and respond, you ask them to stand down. Really, stand down. You're getting too aggressive. You're across the seas shooting and bombing or threatening to shoot and bomb. So these are the things I'm saying need to be cultivated. We got to figure out a better way of being in the world. Our social arrangements haven't been maximized. That means that the arrangement should be such that we are accounting for the least of these, providing resources, providing ways of being in the world that maximize who they are. I always tell students, with respect to our psychological makeup, all of us, I know I'm making a universal statement that philosophers say you shouldn't make, all of us need assistance, right? Yeah. It's how we manifest it. It's how we present it. God knows I got issues, right? And so my point is, that's not our problem. Our problem is trying to cultivate and refine and engage the multitude of differences of how we express and how we are in the world. That's what we need. But all of us, trust me, we all need assistance. We all need a hug, as they say, right? We all need a hug.
If we want to admit it or not, right?
That's right. I make students upset every time. I was like, dude, come here. Get away from me. I know you need a hug, man. You need one. You're being overly aggressive. A hug, man. Go find a tree, right? Something.
Yeah, and I'll come back to something that you just said, because that discussion about love, right? Because that's also an interesting one, because essentially it is in the way I view it, in my estimation, it's all we need, right? But it's so hard for people to give, just give it. And that's an interesting thing. But I want to get to a question that Rob had. He says, any thoughts on how to approach someone who is clearly capable of great things, of further maximizing their humanity, but feel comfortable where they are and get kind of stuck? He works with many teenagers and young adults who are in this position.
Wow. Suggestion would be, and I know this sounds so passe, but George Benson did it first, and then Whitney Houston. The greatest love is where? Inside of you. And I think that we are now, not unlike other generations, we live vicariously. We constantly live through others. We celebrate people whom we'll never meet. And so the first step is to get the youth to love themselves. Every scratch, every bump, every pimple, every flaccid, muscle, everything. We have to do this, right? I go in class intentionally tell students I'm not a Beyonce fan. I know, yeah. Because my issue is you have more love for her than you do for your own self. Like, this is amazing. You fight for her. You fight for her. You have relatives you've yet to meet. You understand? This is this is amazing. And so my thing is, this is not a panacea. I'm not saying this is a quick hit and out. It takes time to convince someone of their worth when they live in a world that tells them they're worth less, right? So think about it this way. It's going to take as much time to get them to find worth as it was telling them they had none. And we've spent from day one telling no worth. You're not famous. You're not valuable. You're not them. You can't be. I mean, so it takes a lot of work. But I do believe my humble suggestion would be, how do we fortify what the person is? How do we get them to look at themselves and find the value? That's what I really want. I want them to say, I love me with all the foibles. As I said, with every pimp, with every pimple, with every bump. And the biggest group has been Black women who've been attacked, I think, more than any group in the world, right? In the world. And I can go specifically into why I believe that, but I think that's the most difficult. Rearing 2 Black women in this country has been pure hell. Not because of them, it's because what the world tries to turn them into, make them into, reduce them to, conflate them. That's the problem. Right. And then Jamal, you know what happens, Nancy and Jamal? Sadly, we men then ask them to help us feel better. Mm-hmm. Ain't that something? Right. They struggle all day and they come home and apologize to us. Wow. I saw my mother do it for years. Right. Trying to strengthen me when I'm dragging every modicum of strength out of her to improve me, never putting anything back. Right? It's like taking things off the shelf. If you don't replace it, ain't no more peanut butter here. You know what I'm saying? You ate all the peanut butter. Where'd you think it was going to come from? Mm-hmm. Right? Same thing with taking from people. You just take. So that's why I was posing the question about what does it mean to be a man? I don't know what it means to be a man. I know what it means to be a responsible adult, someone who cares. My mother reared 6 of us, 4 boys, 2 girls. Whatever I am to this day, if it's a man, cool. But I want somebody to say I'm a humane human. He cares. He loves. He fails, but he tries to do better the next time. That's what I want. So this whole what is a man BS, I'll say, is like, why are you running around trying to become this elusive chimera? It doesn't exist anywhere. Like, what are you chasing? You need to fundamentally figure out how best to be a loving, caring, humane human. What about that? Right? This is the reason why our gay brothers and sisters for years had problems adopting. Because somebody thought that genitalia would define love. Well, you need a mother and father. No, I need 2 loving, caring parents. I need people who care for me, who will sacrifice, not monetarily, but psychologically and spiritually for that child, right? As we say, go to the hole for you. That's what I want. Go to the hole for me. And if you have to, and I know this isn't popular, lie to me. Any sometimes dated, I'll be like, sometimes it's good. Just lie to me. Yeah. Tell me I'm good. Tell me, I'm good. Just don't ever let me find out the lies,
Yeah, I couldn't say that better. I think also it's the acceptance. I think a lot of us walk around and we aren't accepted, and therefore we don't accept ourselves because we see our acceptance as something that's not good. Like, people don't accept me, so how can I accept who I am if they don't think that I am? So I don't accept myself because I'm not accepted around me. But if you just love people, just tell them they are good, tell them they are who they are, and then eventually, you know what I mean? I think that's another thing that we run into. We want everybody to be who they're supposed to be on our timeline.
That's right. That's exactly right. And guess what we do, Jamal? When they don't, we dump them like all other trash. You see that? Yep. Dump them. And then, hold on, we're not finished. Then they come back to Jamal. I need some help. Whoa. Didn't you just cut off our relationship? Mm-hmm. Wow. So again, that's what I'm telling you. We humans need a lot of work, man. We problematic. the first line, as I tell people, the first line of Immanuel Kant, 1784, what is enlightenment? Was ist der Aufklärung, right? He does. What is enlightenment? And this is one of the greatest lines that I think people take for granted, that enlightenment is humanity emergence from its own self-incurred immaturity, right? Enlightenment is humanity's emergence from self-incurred immaturity. We're our own worst problem. And then he goes on to say, it's not for a failure of reason or or resolution that you're in this position, it's because you fear living according to your own reason. Sapere aude is a Latin phrase. Have the courage to use your own reason. That's the problem. We're afraid of being wrong. Every time I talk to students in the classroom, why are you quiet? Well, I don't want to be wrong. Everybody's wrong. What do you mean? What are you doing? This is when you rehearse. The only way you make improvement is rehearse. That's called experimentation. Try to live. Don't think about living and never live. Try to live, get it wrong, make the improvements needed. But how dare you sit there in silence and never have the courage to use your own reason? Believe yourself. What does he say in the same document? The church says believe, you do. The law says follow the law, you do. The physician tells you exercise, eat, you do. When will you make your decision? Now, this is the caveat, and a decision that does not undermine your humanity or anyone else's, though. So I know where some folk go, well, see, I told them it was mine. No. I'm watching you. I'm not going to stand here and watch Jamal undermine his own integrity. And we could talk more about that, right? So we have a generation that self-medicates, for example, right? That they are afraid to listen to the own machinations of their hearts and minds, so they'd rather be high to silence the noise, right? That's what we can't let go on. We got to step in and say, sometimes listen to yourself, pay attention to yourself. How else can we make better improvements of ourselves if we don't listen? So I tell students, have you ever walked around an entire day without earbuds? You understand that? Have you ever? And they're like, oh, one kid comes back, I tried it. Oh my God. I said, yeah, it scared you, didn't it? You finally heard yourself. You listened to yourself, talk to you. I said, take a walk for an hour and just listen to you. That's scary. And more importantly, that should be one of your best friends, right? You'd rather call somebody and talk to them. So all I'm saying is get in there, fight. And again, I love the beautiful thing about Black folk. I know we still here, which means we've been fighting. I don't want you to stop fighting, right? This is a month that is dedicated to highlighting, not reducing, but highlighting what we've done. I mean, we ain't gotten over it. We may never get over. But one thing about us, though, we're still here. We're still here. I love that line from Color Purple. Remember that? She said, I might be Black, I might be a woman, I might be ugly, but I'm still here. Hell yeah, Celie. Still here, baby. That's what it's about. She's still here.
That's it right there. That is it right there. An anonymous person asks, any advice for human service workers that have valued helping others and are feeling overwhelmed or burned out and dealing with that sense of futility in their role?
Take a break. I just talked about this yesterday in another talk I gave. Take a break, because we're going to keep pulling from you and never let you get away because you care so much for us. So you got to stop. And if those who know you, they need to stop you, right? You got to take a break. You will do yourself or no one else any good driving yourself in the ground. Martin Luther King died at 39. I think his internal organs looked like they were 60 plus years old. Same thing, Malcolm, Coltrane, Thelonious Spear Monk, 35 years old, dead. Yeah, we appreciate the music, but we never pause to say, dude, take a break. Deep breath, baby, right? That's what we don't do. That's what must have to happen. So I know it's hard to pull back when you see there's so many people in need and you want to help everyone. But every now and again, you got to take a deep breath. You have to stop, right? You have to gear up. See, the funny thing about pause, you don't have to pause as a non-action. Think about it the way that the brain never goes to sleep, right? If it did, you die. So the point is, you have to think about your respite in a similar form. You might not stop, but you can pull back, right? You need to be able to debrief. You need to be able to recalibrate, which means you can't continue to take on the same load all the time, right? Exactly. Your oxygen mask first. That's right. So the idea is, as I said, nobody's asking you to stop, because I'm guilty of that too, right? There's a lot I need to have done, but what about the next student? What about the next student? Sometimes instead of 30 students, how about one for the day, right? so you can sleep at night, because people who love caring and giving in public want to go to bed at night saying they tried. So I'm not telling you to stop. That just would be disadvantageous. I mean, the idea is to pull back, deep breaths. Can you cut it a little bit? Can I help you? Can I do a little bit for you? I mean, the idea that we want to support each other as we support others. So that would be my suggestion.
Self-care. It's very, very, very important, especially in this work that we do. It takes me back to your analogy about the peanut butter. You know, you take. At some point, you got to refill, and that's what that does. That self-care.
May I also add that if you don't take care of yourself, that someone, something, the universe is going to intervene and knock you down.
Yep.
And I think that Professor Davis just gave us a list of amazing human beings that died way too young, as an example. But also, if you are doing more than you are actually capable of doing, your body's going to let you know. And it's really important to listen to your body before it becomes too late.
Yes.
I've had my personal experiences recently, and I attest to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. So our next question comes from another anonymous person. They say, I feel confident about all my accomplishments. I have an interview and I start second guessing myself. I fought for it. Now I'm worried. Why?
Wow, that's profound. I understand the worry, because when we input and we assume that the input is the best production we have, you worry whether or not other people accept it. So you know what, I'll tell you the same way when I get students who apply to graduate school. Once you've taken care of the requisite requests made from you, be done with it. It's easier said than done, but you have to say, I've done my best. For example, my daughters, since the time they began getting or receiving grades in first, second grade, you know, stars, happy faces, all the way up to A's, B's, what have you. Before I look at any grade report, my question is, have you done your best? Have you put everything in? I don't want to see your grade. It's irrelevant, right? I don't need to. So what I am telling you is, if you've done your best, you're done. You got to let it go. You can't hold on. Now, as with my daughters, they knew there was something else that could have been done. See, that's what created a little issue, because I was like, is that it? Because the thing is their word. I don't know. To thine own self be true. I mean, I can't tell them. But my point to them was, this is a question for every person that needs to ask themselves. Did you do your best? Didn't say perfect. Don't get it twisted. Did you do your best? And if you did, let it go. I'll be honest, I'll give a little disclosure. When I was a student here at Morehouse College, if I went in and didn't do well on the test, that test stayed right there in that room. I wasn't going to walk around all day, oh God, I didn't do well. No, it couldn't change. The grade was not going to change. My lack of productivity was not going to improve. Do you understand that? It wasn't going to get better. Why would I walk around miserable? And students do that. What's wrong? I don't know how it's going to turn out. It's done. It is done. So all I'm saying is, you did what you were supposed to do. You did your best. It's over. You can run yourself in the ground worrying about how someone thinks about what you did. Right? And that's what we don't want. You took care of you. This is the value of hope. Optimism. Hope means you do your best to let the chips fall where they may. Optimism is arrogant. Do you understand that? Optimism says, oh, it will happen. No, I don't know where you got that information, right? That you know the outcome when it's not even in your control. So the idea is hope. You've done your best. You've done everything you think you should have done. Be done with it. You can't carry, that's too heavy of a weight to carry. It's like teaching. Anybody on here who knows, I have to teach and say, did I do my best? Sometimes I haven't done as well as I think I should have. But when I think I have, I'm not going to sit around wondering how many people may have been motivated to learn, because I can't learn for you. My job is to create an environment that's conducive to learning. And my job is to do my best at expanding the possibilities. But I am not going to sit around, did he learn something today? Did he understand? I can't do that. Now, when I first started teaching, I did, which kept me up late at night, because I started thinking, maybe I should have done this. Maybe I should. No. So you put it out there. We accept this in sports. You know this, right? Right. The famous Michael Jordan flu game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He played and he had the flu and he left it all on the floor. And, you know how many teachers go to classes, the first grade, second grade teachers who are sick as hell every day? Yeah, Jordan, that's cute. It's different to deal with somebody else's headache called a child, right? Somebody else's child, right? And you got 20 of them and you're sick as a dog, but the students never know because he or she is a teacher, right? They're a teacher and they're going to get it in either way, right? And that's what I love. I tell them all the time, don't ever think that you're the only one. These teachers, bless their hearts. I'm talking about elementary and secondary primarily. To deal with somebody else's problems every day, every year, those are saints, right? But my point to your question, they have to do their best and leave it. They can't carry it. Well, they do, but you can't take it home. Because trust me, the teachers go home every day worried, damn, did I not do something?
So I want to ask you about worry, because I look at worry as sort of for me, it's a useless emotion. It's inactionable. It keeps me stuck. I sit here and I worry, but it leaves me in this place where I'm not doing anything. I'm just concerned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I look at worry as something that it kind of goes back to the question that you would ask your daughters. Am I doing everything that I need to do to prepare? To like you said, take the test, or if it's my child, I'm sending my child out into the world, and I sit here and worry at night because why? Did I prepare my child to be out in this world? And that's how I look at worry. You know what I mean? So if I've prepared myself and I've, like you said, done everything that I feel like I could, I don't have any need to worry.
What does the song say? After you've done all you can, just stand, right? That's it. I mean, how do you do more than you can do? No, I'm empty. Like I said, we accept it from the athlete, accept it emotionally, psychologically, intellectually. Have you done all you can? Right? And more importantly, have you done as much as you can today? Because we hope there's a tomorrow. So get it in, get as much today, and try to do it again. If you get another opportunity tomorrow, you do it again. Do it again. Yes, sir.
So Mercedes asks, what advice would you give to someone who second guesses themselves a lot and is very indecisive?
That's a similar position. As I was saying earlier, you have to make decisions and rest with the decision with the openness to reformulating it, restructuring it in light of the results. This is a form of experimentation that we have to live in accordance with. We have to experiment more often. That is, make a decision you believe, you evaluate it, but you got to make the call, right? My big mama, big time church lady, my big mama, and she was all of 4'11", used to stutter. And he, baby, you got to decide. You just got to choose, right? Heaven or hell, right? So whatever decision you make, and I'm not saying a physical heaven or hell, but you got to make the decision willing to go to both. My big mama say, don't slip up and go to hell. Go in on purpose, right? Which means you got to make your decision. Do you understand that? That means That's the point. Call it. I am going to do this. Do it. Now we're assuming this is after reflection and evaluation, right? That's the point. But you got to call it. There's no way around that, because you don't want to live the rest of your life always teetering. Because think about this. How do you evaluate choices? Usually, not always, it's predicated on what we think outsiders will say. The result won't be accepted by others. So if we can work on that part of it, maybe it's easier. If you're willing to accept the results of a decision, that might make it better. But you got to call it. And then if you think that it was not the best, next time, if you get a next time, if you can go back and change your answer. My thing is, I don't want you to hesitate. That's why we have in physical activities, we call it muscle memory, right? Because you want to be able to make the call without pausing, right? You can't hesitate when life and death are on. You got to be able to make the call. I made a bad decision. Okay. You can create another network of behaviors in light of that, though, right? So if I made a bad decision based on muscle memory, which means that I have engaged in an activity to the degree to which I've habituated it over time, I no longer think about it, I just do it. I can rearrange that and do it differently. But I would at least like to say it was mine. I made that call, right? Now, sadly, we know some of these politicians use that language. And I am the decider. Some of y'all said that, right? I'm the decider. Bless his heart. Poor Mr. Bush. He said, I'm the decider here, right? The decision maker, maybe? Yeah, but decider. But yeah, just call it. You got to make a decision for yourself.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get caught up in, is like you said, it's the appearance and how we appear to others. And we get stuck in our own decision making. But I also think we get too caught up in right or wrong, right? Good or bad, and what is that based on? And I think a lot of people is based on ease. Like if I make a good decision or if I make the right decision, things will be easier. And that's not always the truth. It's not always the truth. Just because it's hard doesn't mean it was the wrong decision.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes we just, like you said, continue to fight. As long as you continue to fight, as long as you continue to live, things will turn around. Things will be as good as you fight for them to be.
That's correct.
So,
excuse me, Professor Davis.
Yes, ma'am.
So is your class coming online with us?
They're supposed to be. Yeah, they're supposed to be.
I was about to say,
people joining.
Yeah, I was about to say we got some people here. Sam said he here. About to say if you and Professor Davis 1 o'clock class, report to the chat.
Okay.
So I'll tell everybody now, if you're in my honors philosophy class, you need to go to the chat and say you're here.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We got another question, another anonymous attendee. What about knowing what you need to do and that what you are currently doing isn't helpful for yourself, but you continue to do it, turning it into a cycle?
And that's the answer. See how brilliant we are? That's the answer. See, what did they say? The road to recovery is self-admission. That's it. That's exactly. Do you understand that, Jamal? That's the answer. You know what needs to be reworked. Now do it. And I'll affirm you. Yes, change. Make the change. Yeah. Nobody needs to say a word to you. You got it, Anonymous.
So like I said, I think it's based on, difficulty. Like you get caught up in this cycle of doing what you've been doing. You've been doing what you've been doing. You've been doing what you've been doing. And that becomes easy. I can get up and go to the same job day after day. I know what to expect. I know what it's going to be. And I can be here for 20 years.
Yep.
But is it what I want to be doing? I already know it's not what I want to be doing. But the change is scary.
Yes. It's the unknown. I tell you, you got to experiment. You have to experiment. When I started at Morehouse, I was living in a world of sin and degradation. I was an accounting major, right? Just straight world of sin, T accounts and amortization and, oh God, but I was lifted and went to philosophy. Yes, sir. And my life changed, but it was about experimenting, right? I sat in sociology classes, psychology classes, math classes. I took the philosophy. That's me. It animates me. It motivates me. It keeps me, boom. But you have to be open. So experimentation means open. You must be open to the possibility that your choices have been wrong. You have to. In philosophy, we call it fallibilism, right? The idea that you are open to the possibility that you are wrong and will change in light of the countervailing evidence that tells you this isn't right. This is incorrect for me. So that willingness to constantly change is extremely important, extremely important. All you got to do is just tell yourself, do this for a minute, step back, evaluate. And if you stay, now you have to cultivate, refine, and make it better. Right?
Mhm. So I had this question that somebody, M. Lee, asked in our last webinar that I saved for you. It's about structural racism, affirmative action. But I'm going to get to this question that Michelle just put in the question and answer first. She said, I have forgiven my younger self for my mistakes. However, my children and my family keep recounting the injury. I know I hurt people. I know hurt people, but how can I stop the attacks without repeating the cycle of hurt?
Woo! Wow. First, it's about you in this regard because your mental sobriety is primary. And sometimes the weight that others will place on us is far heavier than we deserve. I mean, you just said you provided, I guess, some form of apology, explanation, whatever you needed to have done. And I would never tell you to dissociate from anyone, but sometimes the vacation we need may be from other people, right? I wouldn't want someone to constantly return to a situation or an environment that is not maximizing the humanity. You need a vacation. When I was in graduate school, I would call home periodically and ask what's going on. And to be honest with you, sometimes my mother, well, you know, your nephew was just arrested or these things happen. I would literally get to a point calling home, how you doing? Don't tell me any other news. I don't want to hear about, I just want to know how my mother's doing. Is it hot or cold in Atlanta? Any interesting factoids about the changes in Atlanta? All right, I'll call you later. Because I had to pull back from from the overstimulation of knowing everything. And so the first thing we've already said, a form of self-care is putting yourself in the presence of people who appreciate you for you, but at the same time, not accepting of mediocrity either. So you can't be around folk and accept mediocrity from them. But if people are expecting your best and you're doing your best, that's where you want to go. That's where you want to get, right? So again, I keep using Jamal, but if Jamal and I are hanging out and he's not maximizing Jamal, either I'm going to warn him 1-2 times. After that, Jamal, you know what? I'm going to talk to you later, brother. Right? Got to talk to you later. Because we don't want a messianic complex. I'm not here to save Jamal. That ain't, you see what I'm saying? That as we say, that ain't my lane, nor do I even want it. You understand that? So the value has to be protecting oneself to maximize you, right? And there are a lot of family members. I mean, I have family members now that are, quote unquote, on the outs. But what my mother has taught us is always make sure you best foot forward, right? What does the old folks say? If you have nothing good to say, don't say anything at all. Same philosophy, right? If I'm going to be around you, I don't have to like you, but I don't have to tell you I dislike you either.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, this should go hand in hand. And I appreciate it. All my enemies keep it to themselves. Right? I appreciate that. And there's something of a notion of care that's functioning there. So all we want to do is make sure that you're maximizing you and take a break, relax, talk to yourself. Again, like I said before, you have to be in conversation with yourself, ongoing conversation, right? Always asking yourself, what have I said? Did I say it as best I could? Have I extended care and respect and love, the things that I ask from others? Am I performing these things? And if you can say yes, then you have to move to the next level. Maybe I need to take a break.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't agree more. So the structural racism question that Emily posed, and I want your thoughts on it. The structural racism is a watered down, behind the scenes Jim Crow. Also, do you feel that affirmative action was or is a feeble attempt at trying to create an equal but segregated society against the monstrosity of structural racism?
Woo, my Lord. Well, we'll start with the latter first. Interesting thing about affirmative action, as we all know, white women have been the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action of any subgroups, right? And the only reason that's possible is because they too are a marginalized group, even though the face of affirmative action is Black people, particularly Black women. And to the degree to which, there are stereotypes around it, it's needed because of bigotry. See, that's the funny thing about it. Nobody ever talks about what are the conditions that make necessary anything like affirmative action. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. So stop addressing those who are supposed to benefit from my oppression. Because that's what you're saying is, why must you benefit from my oppressing you? Duh. Right? I mean, and that's the problem I have is no one ever looks at the cause of the need for affirmative action. People have a tendency to show deference, whether or not it's cronyism, whether or not it's favoritism, whether or not it's out and out racism. So one thing I was trying to come up with a concept I referred to as reasoned racism. Reasoned racism. We have a tendency to think that someone is a racist because they're ignorant. I don't think so. I think some people have actually thought through it and decided they wanted to be racist. They decided. Mm-hmm. Right? That they made a clear decision, I want to do these things. Affirmative action is a legal response because it can't be de facto, right? I mean, but de jure, it has to be in place that if I catch Jamal, you see that? Mm-hmm. And I want Jamal to have levels of trepidation because I might catch him. So Jamal is now forced to be a better human than he chose to be, because affirmative action is out there lurking and watching him, and he doesn't know who's going to say what. So when a woman comes to interview, he's nervous. I like that. Yeah, make him real nervous, right? Because Jamal wants to hire all of his college cronies. He wants all of his buds there. And the only way we can break that is have the possibility of a response by legal response, that is, to his misbehavior. Now, on the white supremacy side, on the sort of racism side, our institutions are embedded with these ideologies that forge marginalization of multiple groups, whether that is gay, lesbian, trans, women, Black men. The list is long. And what we try to do as a society, to some extent, is to constantly have oversight, to ask questions. Have you been your best you today? That's the question that we ask in corporations. Have you been your best you today? Think about it. Corporations want to be treated as individuals, but we don't ask them the same questions we ask of individuals, right? Let's pull over a corporation. License and registration, please. Where you going? Who you with? How long you going to be there? I mean, we ask, my point being hyperbolic is to say, ask of institutions what we ask of individuals, right? And that we will have oversight. You can't do this to people without repercussions. You can't make $56 billion profit and think that your hands are clean as a corporation. I won't name it. Maybe they're giving you all money, but there's a corporation that just $56 billion, right? Yet homelessness abounds. And so, right? So my point is, this is the problem with these institutions that promote and promulgate bigotry. Now, white supremacy is a bugaboo, as we say, because it's one of those evasive things. For example, one of the difficulties, particularly with Black people fighting and enduring and living in the presence of white supremacy, is never having a name to associate with it. You understand how important that is? Throughout the world, there are always names, from Mussolini to Hitler to Stalin. People can point. When we get to the US, the system, them. Oh, well, who is this them? I don't know who you're really talking. Seems like you really aren't clear here. I am clear. Part of the problem with racism and white supremacy is it permeated all of these institutions and all these societies, Germany, France, Spain, Portugal. Yeah, it's hard to call a name when all of these institutions and countries have benefited, right? And that creates for difficult dialogue, though, because when we try to talk about it, it's always amorphous. It's always elusive, because if you aren't clear enough to understand that institutions promote bigotry and racism and white supremacy, you get caught up in individuals. So the short example is, how is it that a Black police officer can engage in anti-Black behavior? Because the institution has defined the lack of value of Black people. Do you understand that? The institution says. So when I walk into a bank and think that there's a Black banker, that's a banker. And my definition has already been prescribed by the institution for me. That's why the Black loan officer rejects the Black person for being Black, because the institution has said, oh, you're taking a chance there with that group, right? Be careful. And so we need to be very careful about how these institutions function and people participate. Every now and again, we get some brave and courageous individuals who rebuff the institution's ideologies and says, I will not do that. We do have those people, but they're too far and few in between. We need more people to say, I'm not going to do what you told me to do. Women are people. Women are human. I'm not going to do it. She deserves a right. He deserves a right. I'm not going to do what you told me to do. But again, that's very rare. That's why people say things like, well, some of them are good. Yeah, but their goodness should be an expression in action, not merely in word.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I think you hit on a lot of really, really key points there. I'm going to get to this last question right here. Lovey asks, have you worked with any young Black males caught up in cycles of violence? If so, what has worked for you? She points out this incident that happened over in Pittsburgh where a 14-year-old killed a 17-year-old while he was on house arrest for a prior murder. He took off the ankle monitor, somehow had a gun, and went and killed the 17-year-old and came back home. And they feel like it's such a common occurrence these days. And what I'll say is this, Lovey, kind of going back to Professor Davis's point about love. I worked 17 years in a residential treatment facility for court adjudicated youth in Montgomery County. And I dealt with, young men from the ages of 10 to 19 years of age who were arrested for various situations and put into our care. And pride is a big thing. To me, pride is dangerous nowadays. And it's what a lot of our younger Black men who don't have much else hold on to. And if they don't have anybody to love them, they don't have anybody to show them differently. These are the instances that we find ourselves in. And it's a sad thing. And I can tell you from experience, I wished so many times that I could just take some of my young brothers home with me at night, give them a safe place to lay their head, where they didn't have to worry about anybody running up in the house, or, you know, mom or dad coming home and going upside their head, or whatever the situation was that they faced. I wish that I could have took them all home and just gave them somewhere that they were safe and they could come back to and knew that they were loved and held accountable. But in so many instances nowadays, all they have is their pride. So I'll let Dr. Davis answer that.
No, that was excellent. Excellent. I mean, it's sort of weird. This isn't an isolated or vicarious statement I'm making. I grew up in neighborhoods like that. So it's not a matter of me working with. I mean, I work with some intervention programs. There's one here called Project Pinnacle that I work with. It's it tries to intervene in the lives of individuals who've been engaged in less than favorable behavior. Is that a good enough euphemism? And their youth, normally Black. And I engage them at least once a year, every year for the last 6-7 years. It's run by a judge here in the city. But the value has more to do with they're the people I grew up with. I mean, the neighborhood I grew up with here in Atlanta, you ain't saying nothing but a word. What do they say? You ain't saying nothing slick to a can of oil. I mean, so for me, it's personal. How do I talk to my nephews? How do I talk to my neighbors? Because that's the neighborhood I grew up in. And sometimes it has to be, dude, you're free. Don't do that. I mean, part of it is we've given a lot of youth the language of determinism. And that is we make them really believe that they have no options. So we tell them, what else are you supposed to do? No, partner. Whoa. No. Poverty is not a condition for criminality. It has become associated, but not because it's a necessity. And I always use the analogy, if poverty produces violence, Black people would have been killing each other during enslavement, because that was far worse than poverty. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not a lack of material goods that caused this. There's something else going on. And you know what something else is? Society places no value on people who are poor, first of all. And damn sure if you're Black poor. And so what we've done is when we are upset, when we are aggressive, it seems that the easiest victim is right next door. So we know about the propensity of crime in close proximity. You know, we can give you the stats for those, but if you're in close proximity, that's normally the group that will suffer worse. Okay. But more importantly, though, when society does not value, there's no premium on the life of Black folk, that's the easiest one to take out, right? Jamal, if you killed me right now, they might look for me for a while. Go kill somebody white, and heaven forbid a white woman. Do you understand? This society says you don't stop until Jamal is caught. I don't care if it's the last day, you keep fighting. My point is, fight for us all. It's not an either or. All lives are valuable, without question. But we don't live in that society, Jamal. Brothers get killed every day. That's why when we watch the news and see the murder, I don't call names. I said, because there are probably 50 or 60 more. We didn't have a camera present. And I don't want you to get caught up in names. You see what I'm saying? You get caught up in names as if you can call the name. No. There's no the name. There are groups of individuals who have suffered similarly. And so until we place value that is already theirs, the value does not have to be given. You just have to stop the restrictions on appreciation of the value. That's our problem. I don't give Jamal value. His value is already there. Inalienable, right? Inalienable, right? Born with it. I decide because I sit in a position that yields power to take it from you, usurp your power. undermine your value and integrity, and then have you fight to get it back. Nah. So that's why it's easy to promote and to promulgate violence against subgroups in the society, because the quality of life is lacking. Even when students talk about policing, I said, it's not a matter of policing. The quality of life in Black neighborhoods is low. That is, that we don't believe that the response of society is one of disdain when criminality is perpetrated. That's a quality of life, right? For me to go into a rich neighborhood and commit a crime, I'm nervous because there's a quality of life there, right? A certain appreciation. But in our neighborhoods, who gives a damn? Go ahead and do him, man. Go ahead and break in there. Who cares? And if you call the police 30 minutes post-fact, all right, they'll show up. Do you understand it? So you create an environment that's conducive to undermining the value, right? It's easy to tear it up and no one care. That's a problem. That's a problem.
Truly. Sadly, we have come upon our time.
I'm going to just insert myself here.
Please
and
do.
Say that Professor Davis, I was thinking it would be really great if we had a question from one of your students, or we had a comment, or you had something to say to your students, because I'd like to bring them into and have them participate on this very special occasion.
I'm glad you placed them on the, yes, thank you so much, Nancy. You put them on the spot. If there's a student, she would appreciate you having a response or question in the chat to demonstrate your presence. That would be Spelman or Morehouse student in my class.
Okay, I'm watching. I don't see any Spelman or Morehouse students. Are they here?
Well, in our group me, they said they are present.
Yeah, they checked. Some of them checked into the chat, definitely.
Yeah, they said Colin Brown, DeVore Johnson, William, Caleb, Kayla.
Oh,
yeah.
They must have something to add. With Professor Davis as your professor, you must have something to add.
There we go. There we go.
This is battling oppression.
Are there shy people only in your class? Is that
no? So you see the one from Samuel Hooper?
What did he say?
What is your preferred method for Black community to battle oppression? It seems as though the peaceful route hasn't worked.
Well, in all honesty, I'll quote Malcolm X. We don't have enough people or weapons to be violent. So that's not an alternative, right? The idea is we're going to try a different profound form of love. That's what we need. And we need self-love. So I'm one who wants to start at home. Right? Love has to start at home. Love each other, love on each other, love with each other, love between each other. Let's work on that. I mean, it's hard to skip your home, right? And then talk about love, value. Let's work. And again, it goes back to self-love too. So I don't think self-love happens in isolation from group. I think these happen simultaneously. So I'm not saying go in isolation like a monk and work on it. The love of yourself and community must be cooperative. That's why I was saying earlier, if you don't find this being reciprocated, you got to find another group, right? Put yourself in a position that maximizes your value. And the value maximizing doesn't mean you don't get critiqued now. You will get critiqued, but it's in love that you're being critiqued, not to undermine you, not to destroy you, right? No haters. Right? Mary J. Blige just told us, no haters, no hateration here.
Heather, I see that you raised your hand. Did you want to ask a question live? If you could put in the chat, if you need assistance of any kind, we'll be glad to get to you.
That might have been one of those misplaced hitting a button.
Potentially.
Well, shall we start to wrap up?
Yes, we should. And so thank
Professor
you.
Davis, you're finished? Do you have any other words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Again, thank you all for this opportunity. I have learned a lot. And as I told you, even listening to myself, so there's a lot of work to be done, right? There's a lot of work to be done. I thank you, Jamal. Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate you all. This has been wonderful. And I wish you all continued success. You all are doing great work. And I think it's work that's needed, and it needs to be more popularized. People need to know that there are still caring and loving people out here. And they're not all billionaires.
That's for sure.
That's my
That's for
point,
sure.
right? Sometimes you
That's for
aspire
sure.
to be a better human and not a richer person.
There we go.
All right. But I thank you all very much for allowing me. And I hope to see you all later.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. I appreciate that. Nancy?
Well, I need to just first, let me do this. Our next presentation is by Dr. Noel Ramirez, who will speak to us on healing-centered practices and psychological flexibility for providers, community members, and healers, a case study from the Asian American communities and mental health. It's scheduled for Thursday, March 9th from noon to 1:30. We're looking forward to having you join us. I would also like to say to Dr. Davis that I hear the word, oh, it's an honor to have you. Yeah, hear it all the time. But I will say, Dr. Davis, Professor Davis, it has been an honor to have you here today. Authenticity is one of those things that we strive for, and in our speakers and in ourselves in this project. And I know that we experienced it today, and I know that everyone who was here is going to walk away a better person, and has learned a lot, and we deeply appreciate that. I also want everyone to know that I will be sending out an email to everyone with links to today's recording, the links to get your certificate of attendance, the link for evaluation, and a list of resources that I'm going to put together from what Professor Davis suggested and what a few other people in the audience mentioned during the webinar today. And I also appreciate Jamal did a great job with keeping us focused and on topic. And I love that that we had student and teacher together for this one. That was beautiful. Thank you all so much.